This evening's Dharma talk is titled, actually it's mistitled there. Chazan doesn't have a very good memory. I think he titled it, Wake Up, Shut Up. Wake Up, Shut Up. Shut Up, Wake Up. Or Wake Up, Wake Down. That was it. Actually, it's Waking Up, Waking Down. You've got to correct this, correct that. Always correcting stuff. People would stop making mistakes. You've heard that before, haven't you? If everybody would just do as I say. So, anyway. I kid the Eno. So the idea with this title is to help you understand, to give me a topic where I can talk about awakening, so I can talk about this in a way that is helpful, supportive, because anybody who's practicing meditation over a long period of time or studying the teachings of the Buddha and the various lineage holders down through the centuries, because this is a cumulative tradition, not a revealed one. The revealed one where someone comes down and says, this is what it is, and this is what I have a connection with the Creator, and this is what he said I should tell you guys. Rather, it's a cumulative tradition where someone has discovered something, shared it with a few other people, and then those people shared it with others, and then somebody maybe looks at that a different way, just like Nagarjuna did in the first century, talking about Mula Madhyamaka Karika. I think that's the name of it, of the just a different way of interpreting what the Buddha said in a way that clarifies it, just like Vasubandhu has in the 3rd, 4th century, and his brother Asanga. Various people, Dogen has talked about the teachings, which the people here in the monastery today studied Dogen's teachings, as they do every Wednesday at noon, discuss that material. So it's difficult to understand what this basic teaching is about, and so people keep turning it and turning it and turning it. And the way I'm saying this is, it's a waking up. Yes, it's a waking up. We wake up. We can't become awakened. It's like coming up from the sleep of separation, the sleep of self-centeredness, the sleep of me, and me and my stuff, me and my values, me and my successes, me and my failures, me and the things that people have done to me. Me and the things that I've done to other people. Blame, guilt, praise, blame. Very confusing stuff. And it's especially confusing because relatively speaking, those things are happening. There is some relative situation of pushing and pulling, praise and blame, and so on. But ultimately, there is no praise or blame. And one has to realize it. And it is challenging to begin to realize that, to train your mind so that you see so very clearly yourself. So you see yourself what this world is, who you are. You actually see who you are. You don't have doubts about should I, shouldn't I, should I do this, should I do that. You no longer particularly even think about that anymore. You just function, and you function out of a kind of clarity that is practically and impractically invisible. You look completely ordinary to anyone else. Someone talking to you in the grocery store or at Sears. Is there still a Sears? I saw a sign once that says Sears and Roebuck, still here. So someone talking to you about ordinary things, you're going to appear just like anyone else. Nothing special. Even the title of Charlotte Joko Beck's book on meditation is called Nothing Special, I believe. Wasn't that her second book? First book? So, difficult for anyone who has understood this to come back into a conceptual framework, which the teachings are about. The Buddha actually said stuff. It's difficult to come back into that area and be able to get the kind of information out of that will support you in your awareness practice so that you can see, understand, awaken to what the Buddha taught. And what does the Buddha teach? Several things, but one of the main teachings is everything is dependently arisen. Everything, every apparent singularity, identity, is dependently arisen. It's dependent on everything else for that, the appearance of that singularity. It appears like something separate, but it's dependent on everything else. Just like the little finger is dependent on the thumb for its being a finger. It's different, but it's the same. It's a finger, but it's different. So the dependently arisen quality is everywhere. It's showing up everywhere all the time. But we get so used to it that we don't notice it. We don't notice how amazing it is that we have a heart that beats, that our circulation is just astonishing. Nerve endings it's just an astonishing situation to have such a thing as an eye that receives light, reflections, and so on, textures, colors, and so on. Amazing. So the waking up part is actually waking up to the amazing situation we find ourselves in of no separation, that we're no longer asleep in the cloud of the three poisons of passion, aggression, and ignorance, pulling, pushing, and shutting down. Pulling on things, passion, grasping, pulling in, and the more subtle form of passion would be blaming, thinking someone else is, or blaming yourself. They did it. No, maybe I did it. I've been so terrible. This is a very subtle form of ego, self-centered mind, narcissism. And then there's more obvious forms. I don't even have to talk about those. More obvious forms of self-centeredness or narcissism. Just out and out pride that we see quite often. So the waking up part is quite interesting. It's a little bit more flashy. It's somebody we think, it's going to be, we have a preconception about what it'll be like when we awaken, or what awakening might be like if we were to suddenly realize our true nature, realize what this was, what this world of no separation actually was. Might be all rainbows and unicorns. But waking down could be said a couple different ways. One is it's actually going down into the negativity rather than getting out of it, waking up away from negativity. It's taking whatever is arising in you as negative or difficult or challenging and taking the awareness and going down into that. Look at it closely. It's like going down into dirt or mud. The other part of waking down is the Tibetan words for this is Tamogyechepa, or ordinary mind. It is so fundamentally ordinary that you can miss it, because the expectation is it's going to be something great, something special, something outside of the ordinary. Someone who is awake is someone who is extremely unusual, because most people are clouded over by their ideas, their opinions, their hope and fear, and their warfare within themselves and projected out towards others or towards the world. We see it everywhere. Even the most intelligent, erudite, and knowledgeable and balanced person, challenge them a little bit, and you'll find out where the self-centeredness, where the ego is, because they will fight back on some level. And what's further interesting is just because a person fights back doesn't mean they're asleep. Very easy for us to jump to conclusions about anything. We're always evaluating everything, aren't we? Have you noticed? We're always evaluating everything that happens in your mind. Is it good? Is it bad? Should I? Shouldn't I? Should I go here? Should I go there? Should I go over here? Should I go over there? And I'm not saying that this is wrong. I'm just saying, if you're a meditator, which you probably are, at least a little bit if you're in here, bring as much awareness to that, strengthen that awareness so you can see very clearly the way you fight or go to war with things or object to things in a very subtle way. So waking down means to actually look down into, using the metaphor of polarity, of up and down, is to see that it's completely ordinary. Awakening is so ordinary, so nothing special, that it is completely sacred at the same time. Again, not two, and not one. That's why it's difficult, because we'd like to do math. We would like to figure out how to calculate this. This actually, you could say, transcends math, because it goes beyond separation, beyond togetherness. It's usually expressed via negativa, or in a negative way, as saying not to. If you say we're all one, that's incorrect. In the Tibetan tradition, there's in the Kagyu tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, is what's called a Mahamudra, or the great symbol, the great gesture, or one taste, one flavor, that everything is one situation, one taste. Rochig is the Tibetan word for that. Not that you need that, but it's just another index, another way to help us continually to bring our mind to that possibility of one taste. Mahamudra. And Mahamudra is, even though it's Maha, which is Sanskrit for great, and Mudra, which is Sanskrit for expression or gesture. Mudra. This is a mudra. This is a mudra. This is a mudra. This is a mudra. There's a couple other mudras. I won't tell you those. This is a mudra. Am I hitchhiking, or am I saying beat it? Saying beat it, of course. So how do we bring our mind into this? How would we recognize if it's ordinary? How are we going to know? Isn't there some kind of special twinkling or some kind of little iridescence there in this nature of the mind? You bet there is. And I don't often say you bet. But you bet there is. And it is called emptiness. And it is completely luminous at the same time. Contradictory way of talking about it, but we have to use, all we have is concepts, which are very contradictory and are very much tied into the relative nature of the world, relative truth. So we need them. This is why poetry seems to work. You can read a few words by a great poet, and the meaning of it actually transcends the words. I mean, if you read it and if you're into that, you have to kind of train yourself. You have to go into it and expose yourself to poetry. Also true with painting, with music. We can hear someone play the same symphony or the same song, and then we hear someone else play it, and we don't know what it is, but for some reason that we don't know, one expression is just, it works better. It's just better. It sounds better. It's like, I don't know if any of you are people who sing, but if you have a good voice and you just sing and you sound good and people like to hear you sing, but you don't want to hear me sing, even though I'm highly interested in singing well. No, I'm not going to sing. So, but there's a quality that we have, that we bring to this, which is everything about our life, as our karma, are the causes and conditions that bring us into this room, or that bring us to a situation where we're playing music, or we're not playing music, or we're drawing pictures, or we're doing math problems, or we're really interested in numbers, or there's just so many different ways that this human being that we, as we find ourselves, express ourselves in so many different ways. And the sitting practice of meditation, shikantaza, is about taking all of that and just very gently setting it all aside, whatever your interest may be, setting it all aside, sitting down and finding out what this is fundamentally, holding very still. It's like a big what question over and over again. What this is. And you may think, or you may not think. But you may think, well, this is fine. I'm happy. I'm doing okay. My life is okay. I have a job. I have this, I have that. I have a family. Things are going along pretty smooth. But everything that arises is going down. And you may be able to say, well, I'm young. I'm only 25, so I've got a lot of time yet. But that time goes very fast. And there will come a time when this whole sojourn called your human life, your lifetime will come to an end. And if you have found out, if you know who you are, if you found out who you are deeply, not a belief in something, I'm not talking about beliefs. I'm not talking about disbeliefs. I'm talking about awareness. I'm talking about waking up and waking down. Waking up into what this is and waking down into its ordinariness. At the same time. It's flat out ordinary. And it's so much ties into your maturity as an adult, and it so much ties into your childhood, your sense of innocence and your sense of wonder with everything that's happening, everything that's going on, everything that is arising and falling. And very strong curiosity about something when you no longer think about things. I'm not saying that thinking is gone. I'm just saying it only shows up when you need to think about something. It doesn't constantly haunt you with jabbering about your life and who you are and what you should do and what you shouldn't do and what other people said about you and what you've done and how you've made a mess of your life. Or how you're feeling totally better now that you've learned that, all I have to do is smoke a lot of weed. I'll feel good. Or the other way around. All I have to do is just stop doing that and I'll feel good. Doesn't matter. There's so many polarities and so many different ways of seeing this and talking about it. Some people can drink 2 or 3 beers every day and do that the rest of their life. No big deal. And other people cannot even get near alcohol because everything just goes right down into a big flood, big torrent. So the ordinariness that I'm interested in saying something more about is when we're working on our mind, when we're working with our awareness, when we're looking for some kind of indication that this awareness practice that we've been doing for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever it may be, that somehow we're making some progress. Not going to happen. I'm not saying you might not have some feeling of meditation, out of meditation practice, where you are less likely to jump to conclusions. You're less likely to judge people. There could be a little bit of that going on. But that doesn't particularly feel like a credential. It feels like something you hadn't been particularly looking at, and now you are, and you think, well, yeah, why would I criticize that person? I can see they're having a difficult time. Have questions yet? Kazan.
If there's really no standard on how
Yes.
is there any relative way of seeing the
Probably not. Quite often a teacher will kind of sit on something like this, then they'll wear some kind of, really beautiful garment, and then they'll have really quizzical looks on their faces when people ask them questions. You could find a teacher anywhere. It's unlikely that a person who is functioning as a teacher will just be, working at the local hardware store and, selling rakes and shovels. Unlikely. But it could happen that person has realized the nature of what this is, but you're putting yourself in a position of being a student is unlikely. So the person might have realized that, but the setup needs to be a setup similar to this one, it seems. And then if you find yourself in front of someone who puts themselves in a situation like I'm in here, where I'm sitting up in front of everybody and pretending to know stuff, then you would have to just trust your own insight, test the teacher. I don't know how that would show up for you. Only you would really know whether can you trust this person? Is this person out to control you, take your money? What does it look like that the motive of the teacher is? Can you see the teacher's motive? And so I think that would show up for each person in a different way. More questions about that would be good. That's a good.
This is very difficult because it seems like you could never see a teacher's motive, and you hear teaching stories that are outlandish, that from a conventional point of view, you would never imagine someone who made their students build towers and tear them down as a real teacher. That's just sadistic. So does some sort of realization about ourselves have to occur before we can relate to a teacher?
I think somewhat there would need to be some kind of chemistry or resonance, like you're speaking of Marpa, the translator, who made his was it Milarepa, build 7 or 8 different buildings or something, and then he would build it, and then Marpa would come along and say, you put that in the wrong place. Take it all down, put it over there. And he would do that. Of course, you have to remember that Milarepa was a particularly difficult fellow. And as the legend goes, or the story goes, he was a murderer who had repented and wanted to follow the spiritual path and ended up had killed people. So he was difficult. He was also confused. So Marpa did this with him, and he wouldn't have had to have done it. He could have left and said, well, this guy's not a teacher. I'm going to build a bunch of damn buildings for this guy. So my teacher, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, my first teacher, had, interestingly enough, had people come up to what is now Shambhala Mountain or Rocky Mountain Dharma Center and build lots of houses up there with the idea that they would all be moving up there and live there as in families, and everybody was really into it. So everybody built a bunch of buildings. And then he made them all move back to Boulder. So all the buildings were up there were empty. There wasn't anybody in them. So that was his version of that same thing. Yes?
Is there a way to work with the desire to make a choice? It seems like we feel like we have to either choose the teacher or not choose the teacher. Is there a way we could work on cultivating just what you call patience and it's called patience?
There's a saying that some of you have heard that have studied, that when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And this may work in some ways and it may not work in other ways. I would say don't do anything unless you have to. If you don't need a teacher, go somewhere else. If you feel like you need a teacher, then look around and find one. And for you personally, that might mean talking to 3 or 4 different people or a dozen people, or you might never find someone. And then only you would know what is going to click with you. When you sat in front of him or her or them, you would either know right away, or you would know within a few days, a few weeks. Maybe it would take a year or 2. Maybe you'd have to really examine this person over a long period of time. It depends on how much paranoia you have. You have a lot of paranoia, you might always project onto the teacher that he or she or they are trying to manipulate you, or they're going to take advantage of you. And sometimes, and this could be said to be actual insight that's true about this particular charlatan. It could actually be something that's happening, or it could be your projection of your own hope and fear onto the person. It seems that the only thing that's really going to help is to train your mind. Sit down, hold still, and train the part of the mind that actually sees clearly, sees the witnessing part, so that you can see that you have a lot of gunk in your own mind stream that takes a while to work with. If you have that, then someone is able to help you with that, then that's probably a possibility that person could function as a teacher. You could probably say quite a bit about that. You certainly poked at me for a while before you became a student of mine. How long did that take you?
2 years.
From the time you met me, yeah. And was I ever trying to get you to do anything, manipulate you? Oh, come on, be a student of mine. I really need a lot of students.
I think the most you did at one point was say, if you'd like, I'd be willing to function as your teacher, and then nothing after that.
Yeah. And that's because I really wanted you to be here. I thought, I got to get this guy to come here, because there's not going to be a monastery unless this dude comes, because I can't do this by myself. So, and there was something to that. I mean, I could see, to address that directly, when I met you, I could see the chemistry that you and I had. But I knew you couldn't, and I know you were paranoid. I think you would agree with that. You were very paranoid about the whole thing. And so all I was doing is saying, well, if you want to do this, I was kind of putting you on the spot. If you want to do this, then I'm ready to do it. And and I only do that once in a while, not very many times. But with you, it's specific because I could see it. So how's that working for you?
Still here.
Still here. I'm still here. You're still here. I think it's to address it a little bit more, I think it's a very specific thing that's who is your teacher might not be a particularly good person for someone else. Another person might not resonate with that person. But it seems to be very, very personal. Both of my teachers, Trungpa Rinpoche, my personal teachers, I have more than just those two, but closer teachers were those two, Trungpa Rinpoche and Kobun Chino Roshi, and they both had quite a few students. Trungpa had lots, had hundreds when I met him, and then thousands by the time he passed away. And Kobun probably had a few hundred. I think I have 20. Yes.
A question from Shane out in California.
Yes.
He asks, does intellectual understanding arise with realization?
Intellectual understanding will serve the realization, but it won't supplant the realization. It sometimes happens with scholars that they get ahead of themselves there, and they're extremely good at handling concepts, and can talk circles around me because I'm not a scholar. So, and I of course would let them. Why wouldn't I? But I would say that it depends. It's a dependent situation where you could probably awaken without a lot of concepts. I think concepts help give us some support, like the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the 12 Links, the 5 Skandhas, the 3 realms, the 6 realms, and on with all of the different provisional teachings. So those support us when we start to go this way or that way. We can say, well, there are 3 marks of existence. There's suffering or difficulty. We know about that. There's impermanence. Anything that comes up is going down. That's pretty helpful. There's a couple of concepts. And the third one's a little bit harder to see, but it is very, very true, is there is no self in the skandhas. There's no solid being anywhere. And anybody, even a person who doesn't meditate, if they look at their mind, they can see that they can't actually find out who they are. They can find out what they do. They can find out what they think. They can find out all kinds of things that are characteristics, but they can't find the identity part. And this is what meditation goes into. It looks for the identity. And it is, and the discovery that there is no solid identity is the beginning of realization. It's not the total picture, it's the beginning of it. Yes?
Here's a follow-up question. Are the scholars whose translations we read about realized?
I'd have to meet them. So I can't comment on someone I have not met. I know if, I'm not saying I would see a glow around their head or something, and I'm not saying I give them some kind of a test, but I kind of have to hang out with them a little bit and see how they're, they can be very, very clear about the nature of the conceptual pointing out of reality. But I'd have to, they have to come here and live for a couple of days. I'll see how they treated my Sangha, and I'll see how my Sangha treated them. That might be more revealing. Have someone like Vasubandhu, who I think was probably realized, but he's long gone away. But some person like, just to pick on a person I know that is still alive, last I heard, Bill Porter, Red Pine, was awakened, and his translations are very, very good. We have the Lanka, we have the Lankavatara. His commentaries are very good, and I hear he likes to garden. That's a good sign. So I don't know. I have to know probably, but I'm not really interested in that. What I'm interested in is what I want you guys to not suffer. Just tiring. Always helping everybody. Yes.
Can you help Kevin Townley out in Brooklyn?
Who's Kevin Townley? Oh, he's the actor, the director, the actor, and the comedian, and a real cutie pie. Kevin, I can help. Yeah.
This question, I hear the phrase "going within" a lot. Is going down into negativity going within? Is there such a place?
I think it can be. I think that if one sits down and has, or in the daily life, have negativity that arises, but you sit down and you're determined with a kind of a sense of a determination and a sincerity that I'm going to see this. I'm going to find out who this person is that other people call whomever. I'm going to find out myself, so I don't have to necessarily buy into anybody else's idea or opinion of who I am. I'm going to find out. So I think going down into that material is powerful and can be done, and it might have to do a whole lot of it. And I think it's necessary. I don't know this. I think it's probably necessary to have a teacher. I had teachers, so that's why I tend to think that. But I think it probably could happen without one. But I had to have people to go towards that could show me what it was that I wasn't seeing about myself. And that's what both of my teachers did in completely different ways. But they both insulted me. And as Trungpa Rinpoche says in the Myth of Freedom, I think it's in there, in the chapter on the guru or the teacher, is the function of the teacher is to insult you. But the teacher could insult you, and you could just decide, I don't like being insulted, I'm going to go do something else. I've had several people, not a lot, because like I said, I don't have a lot of students, but I've had several people feel that I was insulting them. I didn't deliberately insult anybody. I just related to them where they were at. Yes, sir.
Is the desire to awaken dependent on the precursor of intellectuality or conditioning?
I think some of that is, sure. It's kind of all we have at first is some kind of conditioning and some kind of conceptual structure. So I think to some extent, but I also don't think that we can nail it down and say this is why this happens. So it's very complicated. It's like It's like trying to figure out how your mind works, or how your nervous system works, or how your digestive tract works, or how your all the organs they're very straightforward, and scientists know all about them and how they work, but nobody knows what they are. We know how they work, but we don't know what a kidney is. It's pretty amazing. Bailey.
You said just because a person fights back doesn't mean they're asleep.
Yes.
What would it look like for a person who's not asleep to fight back?
Did I say that? I did. Lisa's laughing. I must have said it. Paraphrase your question. Let me hear it again in different words.
How would a person who's awake fight back?
They could appear to be, they may be fighting back. I'm not saying they wouldn't be, but they may be functioning in such a way that it's very easy for others to project onto them that they're making war. But that person may have a much bigger picture than you have of that situation. Their awareness is not tied to just cause and effect. Their awareness is not tied to just success and failure. Their awareness is, and you can't see someone's awareness. We can barely even see what's happening with ourselves. Otherwise we wouldn't be spinning in circles. Is that, you have a deeper part or a more elaborate part of that question?
When you say fight back, is that different from going to war with?
I think it could be different than that. And you could say, how so? And then I could say, I mean, we're using concepts, so we're trying to, and I understand what you're trying to do, and I don't know if we can pin that down in such a way that will be revealing to you in such a way that you'll feel like someone has responded to your question in a thorough kind of way. It gets very convoluted around that. As soon as anybody does anything, you have 15 people, they all are going to think that person is doing something different. People are not going to agree. Now, there might be some agreement, but generally we're just projecting on everything all the time. It's rare to actually watch something occur and not have second thoughts, third thoughts, and fourth thoughts about its value, its lack of value, or its meaninglessness. Those are the three poisons: passion, aggression, and ignorance. And we're meddling with things constantly, our own thought patterns. If we start to have a thought pattern that we don't have a story behind, like negativity that we don't know what it is, and we might need to call it depression because we don't know what it is, so it feels bad. And then we will just call it that, even though three other people have difficult feelings with no story. They're calling what's happening to them depression, but yet they're having completely different kinds of situations with different kind of causes and conditions underlying them. And then they're all by a medical situation might be treated exactly the same. Or possibly somebody talking to them might see that this person is different than that person. This person doesn't need medication. This person might need meditation. Or this person might need to do more with their body. They might need to run or do yoga, or they might... Or possibly a person could see where it has something to do with their food intake. There's just so many ways, and they might be just going through a cycle that is unexplainable. But everything, the reason they call it a cycle is every cycle comes to an end. It's circular. It goes around, and it comes around. It gets really strong, and if you do anything with it, it can hang around. But if you don't do anything with it, it's probably going to go away or dissolve or show you the other side of the situation.
You say lose the war.
I do.
Does losing the war always look like losing?
It's probably to the self-centered identity part, it's going to look like some kind of failure probably. But get used to the idea is just like sitting on the cushion. Get used to difficulty. The word in Tibetan, gomden, or meditation seat, is a get used to it seat. Gom. Get used to this. So it's sit down and get used to how the mind feels when you have no activity. You're not running. You're not cooking food. You're not talking to your friends. You're not active. You're not. Everything is as unplugged as it can be without going to sleep. You sit down and watch what moves. And if you watch what moves, you'll see the way in which the mind keeps cranking up some kind of difficulty or interpretation of everything or elaboration on something happens, and it's a very simple thing. It's very ordinary, but we elaborate on it. So we generate a lot of thought patterns around any given thing to insulate ourselves from it. We build walls. When someone awakens, and I can't speak for everyone, but I can talk about my own understanding of it. When someone awakens, as it says in the Heart Sutra, without walls of the mind, when the walls of the mind are just dropped or gone or collapsed, then you're completely open to everything, and this can be uncomfortable. So you could have the negativity doesn't belong to anybody anymore. You used to be able to blame yourself or blame others for everything. Anything that happened, you could give credit or you could give blame because you lived in a very, very relative world. But now that you're living in an open dimension of reality where there's no you and there's no one else, and you just have, you may be having difficulty. It may be very irritating. I'm glad I was able to answer your question so completely.
How do we get used to failure?
Just keep returning, just repetition. And because if you repeat it and repeat it and repeat it, you can see that nothing is repeated. Ego is the one that thinks things are repeated. That's why it gets bored. And little children quite often are, I don't want to do this anymore. When are we going to get there? But to someone who is realized, they may be bored, they may not be, but they're not bored about being bored, and they're not excited about being excited. So therefore, anything can occur. There's no dynamic that plays into something else, like it says on the back of her rock suit. Nothing else. It says nothing else. I wrote it on there in 2010. And I didn't think it up. I got the rock suit out, and I was writing her name on that, and I put nothing else after it. And I thought, that's interesting. I wonder what that's about. Nothing else. So nothing extra. Everything is exactly what you're seeing right now. At each moment, it's just this all the time. And then you could say, or people could say, or the world could say, yeah, but global warming, yeah, but Republicans, yeah, but Democrats, yeah, but Kim Jong Onion Bunny, whatever his name is. You know, we could keep pointing at that and that. And I'm not saying that isn't there, it won't happen. Just like you could get cancer, you can die when you're 8 years old, getting run over by a truck, or get some kind of disease that, like, what did that happen? What kind of God would do that? Well, probably a God with a sense of humor. I'm watching to see who's smiling. No one. Yeah, Chizan's smiling. Imagine if you really knew there was no such thing as death. Wouldn't it be kind of funny to kill somebody? Yeah. That's why I don't have any students. Too outlandish. Yes.
Could you say more about what that means?
What I just said?
Yes.
It's just a way of talking. Of course, I would never, if I could help it, I wouldn't kill anyone. But I'm just saying it's just a way of talking about it. Just concepts. They're concepts. Keep coming. What don't you understand about it?
The humor. What's funny about it?
It's imagination. I'm saying if you knew, if everyone knew, if you knew there was no such thing as death, there's no way of killing anyone, then it would be funny. It would be kind of a cosmic joke. But of course, because of suffering, we would never do that. Because of suffering, we would never, even if we saw there's no, if I were to look at someone and say, "There's who you are can't actually die," I tell this to people. I've told it to people in this room. Who you actually are can't die. This body's going down, and it might go down sooner than mine does. Doesn't look like it, but could. But who you actually are can't possibly. There's no possible way of killing who you are. Because why? Because you are unborn and unceasing. Who you actually are doesn't come into existence, so it can't pass out of existence. The body comes into existence, and this is kind of your hangout for a while. Been doing this over and over and over again. That's why it's hard to see. It's hard. We don't have a memory of that. Some people do. There's a few people that actually remember other lifetimes. So, yes.
A question from Brian out in White Plains, New York. He asks, what happens before you see its turtles all the way down?
You're exhausted. Before you realize, which is what he's asking, you're just exhausted. You could say you gave up, but it's not exactly that. There isn't anybody left to give up. You're all done. You're exhausted. And it seems to be a little different with each person because each person's karma, what supports your awareness, what supports your spirit. I guess you could use the word soul. I prefer not to. But what supports your Buddha nature? What the Buddha nature is riding on is this amazing mechanism called a living being or a sentient being. But you can't kill Buddha nature. So that self-centeredness, that ego mind is right at it's the end of its rope, as the metaphor goes. I'm just at the end of my rope here. You're just exhausted. You're metaphysically exhausted with trying to awaken, trying to understand what this is. And you don't even give up. You don't. If you're at the end of your rope, there isn't anything to give up. You're at the end of your rope. You're exhausted. And some people, that exhaustion could happen in a few years. Some people, they got exhausted in their last life, and as soon as they come into this life, they awaken immediately. Not very many, but some do. And then you're there's no way to actually paint a picture so that you can say, this is how it is, and then each person will resonate with that and understand it. You have to see it yourself. You're going to have to, each person I'm looking at here, you're going to have to sit down, be with yourself, and get to know yourself. As Trungpa Rinpoche said, make friends with yourself. I mean, the very negativity you've been trying to eliminate by stepping out, by going this way, that way, by eating a lot of pizza, or whatever you're doing to get away from whatever difficulty you're having. Could be any number of things. We all make up different lists. But at some point there needs to be just a sitting down and just a decision. You could say a decision or maybe it's choiceless. You could say it's just, I don't know what else to do, so this is what I'm doing. I'm just going to sit here and find out who I am. I'm going to find out deeply who I am. So there's no doubt about it anymore. Further, any last questions? It's a little after 9. Anything online? Very good. Thank you so much. And don't kill anybody.
We'll close by dedicating the merit that's in the back of our handbooks. I'd also like to remind everybody about the donation boxes that we have in the hallway. We also have blue envelopes if you want to donate to help support Sokuzan and his teachings. There's a box right outside the Hojo. We also do receive donations online. Thank you.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Jio san shi shi hu shi son bu sa mo ko sa mo ko ja ho ro mi. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.